2020 Land Use and Livability Subcommittee. I want to thank everyone that's here, and that would be our staff. They're all spaced out, wearing their masks. I'm very impressed with all of you. Thank you for being here. So I have the Vice Mayor and Councilwoman Williams joining us by WebEx. And I believe we have no call to the public today. So why don't we just jump into the minutes of the February 19th. Do I have a motion? Are there any corrections?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. We have a pretty lengthy consent agenda today, items 2 through 13. Are there any questions of the subcommittee members? Then can I get a motion?
Then move approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 The ayes have it. We also have one information item. Are there any questions on that? Item 14?
No.
Okay, then we can move into item 15 and learn a little bit about our affordable housing initiative. And I see Cindy is here. Gary as well. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. I'm Cindy Stotler, the Housing Director for the city, and with me today is Sherry Boucher, our Affordable Housing Advocate. We were last with you in December to talk about the Affordable Housing Initiative and our timeline and our plans for outreach and research. And Sherry has completed a tremendous amount of work since then, doing research and a lot of outreach. And so she's here today to talk about her results. I'll turn it over to Sherry.
Thank you, Cindy. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I am excited to be here today to go over the Affordable Housing Initiative. And first, I wanted to go over our goals, which were to identify a needs assessment for our community, create a gap analysis for the number of housing units needed, and identify future development sites that could be used for mixed income housing, and create policy recommendations for the subcommittee and council to approve. First, we would like to go over the findings of our needs assessment. What we found was 46% of our households within the city of Phoenix are extremely low income, very low income, or low income. And what that means is if they were to find housing in the market today, they would need a substantial amount of subsidy to be able to find affordable housing in our community. And then 19% of our population would be our workforce population, which would be low to moderate and would need, in some areas of Phoenix, a certain amount of subsidy to be able to afford home ownership or to be able to afford rental. The 35% is the moderate to high population in Phoenix, and they would be able to readily afford our market today with housing. We also completed a cost burden analysis, and what that means is if you're paying more than 30% of your monthly income towards your housing, that you're currently not in affordable housing and you're cost burdened by your housing. So we found that 50% of our renters are cost burdened within the city of Phoenix, 25% of our owner occupied households, and 36% of our total households are cost burdened. So that equates to 199,000 households that are not in an affordable housing unit today. In completing our gap analysis, we found that there is a need for 163,000 units of housing to meet the current demand within our community. 63,000 of those would be market rate, and 99,000 would be subsidized and available to lower income ranges. One of the primary reasons for that huge number, that 163,000 units, is the underproduction of housing over the last several years. So this chart very clearly demonstrates in orange the population growth over the last 30 years and the production of units over the last 30 years. And you can see there's a bit of discrepancy between the number of units created in blue and the population growth in orange. Also, in breaking down our cost burden analysis by income range, what we found is when you look at our extremely low populations, our very low populations, and our low income populations, they're more cost burdened per group than the other moderate to high income groups. And what that demonstrates is that we have a severe lack of housing for our extremely low income residents, our very low income residents, and our low income residents. So they're more cost burdened and forced into higher income housing. So as we transition now into our policy initiatives, I wanted to highlight that each slide you will see has either a short-term time frame of 6 months, a medium-term time frame of 12 months, or a long-term time frame of 18 months or more to complete that initiative or implement that initiative. Also, I wanted to just clearly demonstrate that we're not requesting any funding allocations. We do understand that funding is limited due to COVID at this time. So if funding allocations were needed for any of these initiatives, we would be coming back to subcommittee or in council at a later date for those funding allocations. And moving into our first policy initiative, which would be to prioritize new housing in areas of opportunity. This would be a wonderful option to create a scoring criteria as new projects, new development projects, housing projects come through the decision-making process. It would be an objective way for decision makers to review those projects and understand the areas of opportunity and the community benefit that those projects would bring. So weighing decisions for market rate and affordable housing projects based on the merits of the project rather than any NIMBYism that might come from that project. The next would be to amend our current zoning ordinances to facilitate housing options. So the first would be looking at our multifamily zoning ordinance and creating clear affordable housing incentives, such as parking reductions, density increases, setback reductions for affordable housing developers so they could clearly understand those incentives and how to tap into those incentives, either by providing affordable housing or by paying into an affordable housing fund, which could help us generate some non-federal funding sources for affordable housing. The next is to amend single-family zoning in piloted areas. So we understand that accessory dwelling units are not necessarily something that would work across the board with all of our single-family zones in Phoenix, but we would like to pilot that in certain neighborhoods that would be welcome to that idea. It's a great way to increase the number of units available for multi-generational housing and also for homeowners to rent out and create more income for their households. And also to expand our walkable urban code. So right now we have our walkable urban code within targeted areas of Phoenix. This would allow for us to expand the walkable urban code throughout the city of Phoenix. Creates more flexibility for the types of development that occur, not just in residential, but also commercial and all of the different types of development, and creates opportunities for infill, adaptive reuse, and more flexibility for us to create a variety of housing types. So looking at townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, a lot more flexibility in the development and how we can develop housing and create some more gentle density and create more units out of the land that we currently have.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please. Councilwoman?
Could you tell me the walkable urban code, where that's at now? Is that just downtown?
It's Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, it's currently in TOD areas.
Yeah.
Yes.
The transit-oriented areas.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, this is Alan Stevenson, and the existing walkable urban code applicable area is along the light rail line, except for downtown, where there's already a downtown code that's a form-based code. What this proposed item would do is have the applicable area where a private property owner could request to rezone to the walkable urban code to be citywide, so that in a zoning case that would come forward and go through the full community process as it normally does, but a property owner would be able to choose the walkable urban code instead of a mid-rise zoning district or some other type of zoning district. The walkable urban code could be used as a tool for that particular property with community input and council making that final decision.
Is that true for residential?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, it would be, the proposal would just make it applicable anywhere in the city. Whether or not it is appropriate for that particular parcel would be a decision of the council for that individual parcel. So if somebody wanted to use it for residential, they could. It probably wouldn't happen as much, except for some of your more intense, areas like the village cores and some of those where you were actively promoting more intensity. Then that would be something that I think people would probably use. But for your more traditional parts of the city, I don't know that people would really use it. But there's nothing that this would do that would compel the council to approve it on any individual parcel in the future. It just makes it a tool that could be applied anywhere in the city, as opposed to just the existing segment of the light rail line today.
Thank you.
The next policy initiative is to redevelop city-owned land for mixed-income housing. This is something that the Housing Department is already doing and looking at our underutilized parcels and how we can redevelop more housing on the parcels that we currently have. It could be an item that is expanded to other city-owned parcels so that we could redevelop those city-owned parcels as well through an RFP process and create more housing opportunities. There's also an option to take a look at co-location of uses, so identifying city-owned parcels that are in use as either parks or community centers or potential future uses such as transit centers or transit hubs, that we can include a component of housing in those RFPs. So as we're redeveloping areas or looking into existing uses, we could co-locate that use with housing. And as we've been doing our community outreach, we've noticed that there has been an extensive amount of interest in affordable housing and in housing in general. And public and private partnerships are wanting to participate and help find solutions for housing in our community. So we think it's a great opportunity to create task force so we can get a lot of great minds together and come up with alternative financing sources, low interest financing that is very desperately needed for our affordable housing projects, and come up with some solutions that way, really to find different mechanisms for funding.
I have a quick question on the task force. Would this be for a short duration, or would this be a long-standing group? You don't know yet.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, based on the number of housing units that we need to build, it would probably be a years-long task force. But as Sherry said, there's so much interest and there's so much recognition right now about the need for affordable housing and how to house our homeless populations and all that, that it's a really good time to bring everybody together and start prioritizing, especially in the city of Phoenix, where we want this housing, what kind of housing we need. And there's a lot of opportunity with the healthcare industry, private businesses. Everybody's sort of getting on board and trying to figure out how they can participate, and they're putting their own funding together. So we would like to bring them all together in one place where we can just talk about, where the city wants to prioritize housing, and then kind of bring them together to put that into areas of opportunity where we think we want housing and kind of guide that development. So it would probably be a number, I'm thinking years. I don't know how many years, but hopefully a few years.
And the next would be to implement cost-saving policies for housing development. So when we're looking at the resources we have for affordable housing, we have a limited amount of gap financing, we have a limited amount of low-income housing tax credits. So if we can reduce the cost of each project by a little, we may be able to spread those resources and create more units as a whole. And some elements to create some cost savings could be, as low-income housing tax credit projects are very federally and state regulated in intensity. There's a lot of intensity around those regulations, but also the timeframes are very strict. So having an assignment within the planning department with somebody who's familiar with affordable housing could help streamline those projects. So we could assign a planner to affordable housing projects that would have that specialty and help streamline that process, create cost savings and time savings on that front end of the project. There's also some communities have opted for the reduction of fees, permitting fees and planning fees for affordable housing. This is an item that would require general funds, so it's not something that we think is feasible at this time due to COVID, but we have it as a long-term option. If that becomes feasible in the future, it's something that we could look into. The next is an infrastructure fund. So this is an option to create gap financing for offsite infrastructures that are required as part of the affordable housing development process. And it would create more opportunity. We could even target it to areas where we want to incentivize affordable housing development and create opportunities. If you would like to develop here, you can have a certain amount of gap financing for your offsite infrastructure. This would be something we would have to set up and allocate through an entitlement, federal entitlement source, and it's not currently available today. Also, something we're already doing a great job of is increasing the affordable housing developer representation on our village planning committees and our planning commission. So we've seen a lot of exciting things happening around that, but also encouraging that to continue into the future as appointments come up through the Development Advisory Board, the VPCs, the Planning Commission, and the bond committees. We could look at affordable housing representation on those as well. Additionally, we do have a limited amount of resources for our naturally occurring affordable housing, and when those areas are subject to displacement or gentrification, it's important to have different preservation tools in your bucket to be able to utilize and preserve the affordability of those areas. One tactic that some communities use is a land banking program. This is something that we do on a smaller scale through the Neighborhood Services Department, but it could be expanded upon for preservation and anti-gentrification actions in areas where we think the land could be subject to displacement. We could go in and buy parcels and develop affordable housing, or find existing affordable housing, put in a little rehab, and create an affordability period so it retains the affordability of that neighborhood. And then there's also an option for community land trust. So this would provide home ownership opportunities to lower income households. We're looking at putting those communities or those housing units in a community land trust, and then once they're resold, they're always resold to an affordable housing or a low-income housing household. So into perpetuity, we're retaining a stock of affordable housing home ownership opportunities in our community. The housing department is looking into piloting this project with 5 of our scattered sites homes, so we'd like to expand that throughout the city as well and create more home ownership opportunities for low-income residents. The next is landlord incentives for our Housing Choice Voucher Program, or our Section 8 program. We could look into creating a vacancy payment, so as they're waiting to be leased up, they can receive a temporary payment through the vacancy payment, or a damage fund, so if their unit is excessively damaged, they would be able to tap into that incentive. So generate more interest in landlords to participate in our Section 8 program. And finally, we have an existing rental rehab program, which is a response to the private market that has naturally occurring affordable housing, and we're able to rehab and then create an affordability period so it retains the affordability. A trend we're seeing in the market is that private developers are coming in and buying B-class and C-class apartments, rehabbing them and raising the rent. So this is a tactic we can use to expand that program and preserve the affordable housing stock that we have. The next is to support effective affordable housing legislation. We saw a couple exciting things pass legislation to this year but didn't make it all the way through, which were the State Housing Trust Fund, gained a lot of traction, as well as the State Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. So the tax credit program would create up to 6,000 units per year of affordable housing. They're both great programs that would allow for increased funding for affordable housing. So as our state legislature comes back together, it'd be a great opportunity for us to support that and those initiatives as they come back up in the next session. And then as federal and state legislation comes about that's beneficial for affordable housing funding or opportunities, it would be beneficial for the city to look into supporting those initiatives as well. And finally is our education campaign. So anytime you're speaking about affordable housing or subsidized housing, we all know the common myths that come along with that. But if we're looking at our community, and our community is 46% extremely low, very low, and low income, that means almost 50% of our community would need some type of subsidized housing. And that includes our seniors who are on fixed incomes, our teachers who are starting out, our professional staff starting out in the workforce, our service employees that are servers at restaurants. So these are people that are working in our community that need subsidized rent. And it's not the people that people fear, you know? So really getting out and bringing that message to the community so that they understand the need, they understand who these projects are serving, but also looking at a way of reframing the way we develop, because we have such an increased need in housing in general, market rate and affordable. We don't have enough vacant land to develop in the traditional single-family zoning method. So we would need 31,000 acres of vacant land to be able to develop 163,000 units in the single-family model. So we need to look at a different way of development and a way to identify gentle density throughout the city of Phoenix. So even if we're looking at townhomes or duplexes for homeownership opportunities, not traditional single-family everywhere, and also gentle density where it's appropriate. So kind of bringing that message to the community and creating an education campaign to understand the need and the ways in which we can address that need with different development techniques. So the next steps are for me to obtain subcommittee feedback today, and then we will be going to council policy in June for feedback. And then finally, we'll be creating a Housing Phoenix plan, which provides detailed information about our needs assessment, our gap analysis, and these potential policy initiatives. So thank you very much.
Thank you. You have done a lot of work. I am very impressed. I had a chance to be briefed by you, and you were very thorough, and this presentation's great. We are now joined with Councilman Garcia. I believe you're with us now? Maybe not. Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Just
I'm
wanted
here.
to make sure. Good. I wanted to make sure. Hi. So does anyone have any questions? We have one speaker, but let's see. Does anyone have any questions from the subcommittee? Well, why don't we hear from our speaker then? CJ Hager? I know you're out there somewhere. Hey, there you are.
This works. It's amazing. Thank you so much. This is CJ Eisenbarth Hager with Vitalist Health Foundation. I'm the Director of Healthy Community Policies there. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Vitalist, our mission is to support, connect, and inform efforts to improve the health of people and places in Arizona. And we know that while healthcare and medical care are exceptionally important to health, we also know that factors that surround us on a daily, if not hourly basis, like housing, are equally important to creating healthy people and places. So just a few quick remarks. First, I really want to acknowledge Cindy and Sherry and their work on this. They were exceptionally open. If we ever had questions or wanted to talk through an idea with them, they were enthusiastic and well engaged. So I just really appreciate their approach and the outcome of their work so far. Secondly, we want to really express our support for the recommendations that Sherry presented. We see the impacts of housing on our health on a couple of different levels, and we see the recommendations addressing those. So we see health being impacted by housing from a shelter perspective at a very basic level. We see it affecting health from an affordability, which are housing costs in relation to family income. And also we see housing impact health in where it's located. And by location, it gives folks and families access to community assets that help support healthy people and places like healthy food and parks and public transportation. We also really appreciate that the recommendations are addressing the full spectrum of housing options, from emergency shelter for those who are experiencing homelessness to first-time home. And in particular, priorities 1, 2, and 3, we think are definitely worth especially looking at them. And although we're supportive of all of them, thanks so much for your time, and I appreciate the work that went into this.
Thank you, CJ. This plan is probably more important than ever, and I will say that affordable housing is a huge issue nationally, too. I know in Minneapolis, they actually have done away with single-family zones in an attempt to have more affordable housing. So I applaud you again. Are there any comments from any of the subcommittee? Well, I guess we'll see you in June. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Oh, yes, Councilwoman Williams?
I have a question. Of course, I'm going to work with probably Alan. Is she still there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. So my question is, one of the biggest zoning battles we have, and I mentioned this when we were briefing meeting, when it comes to zoning residential areas, to increase the density becomes an absolute war. And I am concerned, if we adopt this, will that change our zoning and development process?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, this is proposed as a policy guidance that, if adopted by council, staff would then pursue projects going forward to look at how you could add what Cherie termed gentle density into some appropriate neighborhoods. It wouldn't be all of them, but it would be some of them, and there are neighborhoods who are accepting of it and want to see that happen. It would be on a case-by-case basis or a neighborhood area where there would be public input. It's not something that staff is contemplating a wholesale change to zoning a la what Minneapolis did, where they got rid of all single-family zoning. That isn't anything that we have been discussing. We do know that in some neighborhoods, they're okay with having a little bit of density, having a mother-in-law, unit that's a smaller accessory one that might be in the back, and that's okay. Other neighborhoods, that is something they're not at all interested in, and so this adoption of this wouldn't mandate any of it. It would say, staff, go out and have the conversation with appropriate neighborhoods over time and figure out, is there a way to do that appropriately with community input, and then any changes that would allow that to take place would have to be done to the zoning ordinance that would go through the village planning committee, neighborhood meetings, planning commission, ultimately to the city council sometime in the future.
We are in a much different situation. We have lots of vacant land. So I don't think we would need to change most of the zoning. I know one of the things we've talked about in the past is allowing new homes to have in-law quarters that include full kitchens. Did that get done?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman, yes, that was adopted as a text amendment to allow for those multi-generational kind of living homes within certain areas, meeting criteria. And so that's the type of stuff that in the future, staff would be looking to work with, property owners, neighborhood groups, to figure out what might be appropriate in some of these areas to allow for some additional, density in terms of accessory dwelling units, or potentially areas where they may want to see more significant, rezonings and upzonings to support additional, development, because there are some parts of the city who do want to see additional, density come in, because they know that that will help contribute to them being better able to land retail projects and office and mixed-use developments that they would like to see that provide other support services. But it's really a specific, case-by-case discussion. There's nothing in the policy guide that says this is what will happen in a one-size-fits-all across the city.
Okay, that's very comforting, because I worry about that. I want us to continue to grow, but I also understand the need for affordable housing. I know we are very short, but I also will say 30% of the income, my entire life, every house I ever bought, I couldn't afford under that rule. So I think we might be overestimating, but I want us to go forward, and I just want to be very cognizant that we include the banks, the developers, and all the people that are involved in developing this zoning this and building this. I think it's very important to get their input on where they see us in the future and how, if their suggestions, how we solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Councilwoman, can you hear me?
Councilman Garcia.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to applaud the efforts. I think you all have done an amazing job. I think seeing the departments work together and coming up with ways to get this done is great to see. I think this is a great step towards filling this need, both in District 8 and the entire city. I do want to make sure that community members are part of the process, as well as include tenants' rights as part of the initiative. We're going through an experience that I hope can be a model. We're not ready to make announcements, I think, yet, but that could be a model of how we can work together and make sure, especially as we redevelop areas, that the tenants that are in certain areas can be part of the exciting way to get more people into housing. And so I applaud this. I think we have some lofty goals to put a lot of people in housing. And I also just want to recognize the timing of it. As we're in this pandemic now, and hopefully coming out of it, we can come together and provide more housing for folks that are more than likely going to lose housing during this pandemic. And so, again, applauding the team, working through the pandemic and bringing this to us today. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Okay, well, thanks again. I appreciate it. We'll see you in June. Our next item is off-premise advertising, and Ellen will be presenting. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Well, we switched the PowerPoint over here. Off-premise advertising is more commonly known as billboards for the subcommittee and general public. And so this is a privately filed text amendment that is proposing to allow for billboards to be within planned unit development, which is known as a PUD, on publicly owned land that is used for schools if it meets certain criteria. And currently, the ordinance allows for billboards to be on PUD-zoned land that is 20 gross acres and within 300 feet of a permitted freeway. In this particular case, what they are proposing to do is with a publicly owned property designated and owned by a school district, it'd be a minimum of 15 gross acres instead of the 20, and it would be within 300 feet of a permitted freeway, and then the reduced setback requirement of 250 feet from residentially zoned property and a residential use. This compares to that 20 gross acres that I talked about, currently what the ordinance allows, and it's within 300 feet of a permitted freeway. The existing ordinance requires a 500 feet spacing requirement from existing residential district or residential use. The reduction down to the 250 is really necessary because of the location of schools and where they would could be located. They do have to be along a permitted freeway. One of the key standards associated with this is it has to be on a permitted freeway, and this text amendment does not change any of the existing permitted freeways. So all the other standards would remain the same, like height, lighting, 1,000-foot separation from other off-premise billboards. It was submitted by the Crichton School District and Community Foundation. We do have the attorney representing the applicant who will speak here in just a minute on this. The proposal by the Community Foundation and the school district is that the school would use the revenue stream that would come from leasing out the billboard rights to pay for after-school programs and other things that the Crichton Community Foundation does to help some, kids within that area and the needs that they have, in addressing some shortcomings within the school district funding, as well as, they have, folks who are working class parents and working multiple jobs, and so the Community Foundation is key to trying to be able to support them in their education and other efforts, as the kids are growing up there, and so this is a revenue stream to help them do that. It would require a PUD to be approved on an individual parcel, so this proposal would not rezone any parcel and allow it to take place by right. They would have to go through and do an individual rezoning on each parcel. It's just setting up the legal framework to allow for someone to apply for it, where currently they cannot do that.
So if we were to approve this text amendment, any school district that wants to put up an off-site would still have to go through a process, correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And so it did go to several village planning committees, although not all of them, because in some instances, they do not have a permitted freeway where this would be permissible at all. So for example, the Paradise Valley Village and Desert View Villages do not have permitted freeways for billboards, and so therefore they did not hear this proposed text amendment. But you can see that it was approved by the village planning committees that did hear it overwhelmingly. It was approved by 12 of them, approved by the Planning Commission 8-0, and staff does recommend approval per the text amendment by the subcommittee, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Sure. Councilwoman?
As part of the PUD process, I guess bottom line is who controls the content on those billboards so that it's appropriate for school children to see?
Madam Chair and Councilman Williams, the city cannot control the content of what is advertised because that is a violation of federal law. The entity that would ultimately have to control that is the school district, who is allowing it to be used on their property, and in their agreement with the company to operate the board, they would be putting in standards under what they would like to see advertised. But that's not anything the city cannot control the content.
No, I understand that. I just wanted to, is there something that we can advise the school district as I think it's a great idea, but I want to make sure that somebody's paying attention what's advertised, so.
I think that's a great item for Mr. Marowitz, who I believe is on the line on behalf of the Crichton Community Foundation to address, because I know it is something they've talked about.
Yeah. Why don't we go to Michael? Are you online, Michael?
I am. Good morning,
Morning.
Councilwoman Stark, members of the subcommittee. For your record, Mike Merowitz with the law firm of Damage and Burnham at 2 North Central Avenue in Phoenix. Councilwoman Williams, to address your question, the content in this case would be controlled through the RFP process by the Creighton School District and the Creighton Community Foundation. When they issue the RFP, it'll spell out content that would be inappropriate to have on a billboard. It's not within the interest of the school district to allow content that would be inappropriate on a billboard that's on their school property. So the RFP will spell out the content restrictions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, do you have anything else to add? Do you still have over a minute?
I do not. I simply registered to address any questions they had to the applicant,
Okay.
which I'm happy to answer.
Thank you much. Any other questions from our subcommittee?
Councilman?
Councilman? Hi.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just want to applaud the Creighton School District for their work on making this happen, and the foundation. They're really excited, and I think are going to be able to do great work with these extra funds. And so I'm really happy that this is going through. And thank you to Alan and everyone for the work.
So Councilman, would that be in a form of a motion? Perhaps?
Sure. Motion as item 16.
second,
Okay, all those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
I hear no nays, so the ayes have it, unanimous. Thank you. Next item is number 17, recertification and update on the downtown redevelopment areas, and Chris Mackey, I see, is coming down to join Alan. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. This item is the recertification and update of the downtown redevelopment area. I do have with me Ms. Chris Mackey, as you noted. This is a joint project between the Community Economic Development Department and the Planning and Development Department to really look at our downtown redevelopment area. And so we have a brief presentation, and then we're happy to answer any questions here. So many of you are aware that state law was changed a few years ago to require that cities have to recertify their redevelopment areas that also include a central business district every 10 years. The statute prior to that time did not require recertification. The city has used redevelopment tools, which are a different state statute than zoning and our planning authority, for a number of years to try and address issues of slum and blight. A number of years ago, it did include a lot of money that came with those designations from a federal standpoint to address some of those issues. There's not as much of that, but there are still really good tools to encourage redevelopment. And so staff has went through this process to really look at how do we recertify the redevelopment area and does it still qualify. And so you can see every 10 years, and October 1st, 2020 is our deadline coming up. We are proposing to break this up because of some of the COVID challenges we've had, where we're bringing forward just the certification now, but in the fall we'll be working on the plan, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well too. That will go with that, but that because it takes a little more public meetings and input to do that, as opposed to a planning exercise of where is the slum and blight and documenting it. That'll take place more in the fall here. So what is a redevelopment area? It's an area in which conditions of slum or blight exist on the majority of properties within it, and that is from the state statute. It is designated as a slum or blighted area, so there's two sets of criteria, either slum or blighted, or a mix of both pursuant to state law. And so in this case, there's some examples here that we'll pull out and show you as they come along here. So dilapidated, deteriorating, aging buildings, housing stock, slum or blight conditions, predominant ones are a lack of infrastructure and subsurface, issues as well. So a lot of this gets done, and the city had a planning consultant that worked on this, where they do a windshield survey of going and looking at all the individual properties and documenting the different conditions, but it also is about analyzing some of the maps and data that go with it about underground issues like infrastructure that is severely lacking, underground plumes or contamination, because those all impact the redevelopment and viability of a particular parcel. And so our RDA within the downtown one, you can see, was adopted in 1979 was the original date. There was an expansion of that. The original boundary was amended 5 different times. You can see some fantastic pictures and evidence all around you of some of the great work that Community Economic Development, Downtown Phoenix, Inc. and Partnership, and the Planning Development Department and others have done over the years within downtown that are really changing the character, of downtown. Okay. And so you can see the number of projects that are here. We'll just go through a few of them, like Arizona Center, ASU, the biomedical campus, certainly the Fry's Food and Drug that opened up as our first, grocery store within downtown. That was a full-service grocery store. in a number of years. And the number of residential units, approaching 8,000 residential units since 2000. So the redevelopment process, as I stated, goes through with a survey that's called the windshield survey, and you go through and look at those individual properties. You document what either the slum and blight conditions are that are there, as well as analyzing your maps and data about environmental plumes, those types of information, and then you put forward and kind of map those boundaries. And then you establish your RDA boundaries, and that has to be based upon a preponderance of the properties demonstrating slum or blight. In this case, it's 50% or greater, and in this case, we found that 71% of the properties had slum or blight conditions by our consultant on this. And so what has to happen as part of this process is establishing the new slum and blight declaration and reestablishing the boundaries. In looking at this, what staff really analyzed and tried to do was look at what's happening not just within downtown, but the surrounding areas that are also impacted by downtown, and have their own redevelopment areas that were done in a lot of instances sometime in the past. And if not redevelopment areas, they have their own plans, because the city has been working within the downtown area and the immediate neighborhoods and community areas surrounding it for a number of years. And that's really the foresight of the mayor and council going back 20 plus years, where the public discussion started really happening more about, well, why don't we grow our downtown, our existing residential areas and existing communities in the downtown as much as we are growing out in the suburbs. That has been our traditional bread and butter as we rose up to the fifth largest city in the country. But what has transpired over the years has been a renewed focus that is really paying off with those projects that we just mentioned a couple slides ago. But it's built upon these plans and the studies that were done to document some of the slum and blight conditions, as well as area plans on what the community wanted to see. And so what staff is proposing in this plan here with the RDA boundaries is to include a larger boundary that pulls in some existing RDA areas. We went through, and even though we didn't have to reestablish some of those other areas, we did to go through and substantiate that there still is slum and blight issues that need to be addressed. Some areas were removed within those, but it consolidates all of our existing RDA plans that we will be able to go forward in the fall and work on one larger one that we'll talk a little bit about the framework on that in a minute, but it will bring in the elements of those existing ones that the community still wants to see happen. So we're not getting rid of them, but it's bringing them all into one bigger and better, plan to address, slum and blight within this whole area. It does add portions of the Sky Harbor land reuse area. So as you all know, that area has had tons of studies over it, a huge 2-year planning process, plus administered by the aviation department. We don't need to go back in and have another planning process. What we need to do is recognize the work that was done with that and pull it into this plan in the fall. It does expand some more areas along the light rail line here, and it does include some areas west of the governmental mall area as well, included that were not there prior, shown up in this little purple circle here as well. And then along the Washington and East Lake, there's a little bit of area over here that is expanded and included. And then along the light rail line today, going down South Central, that's under construction to include some of that as well. It does remove the RDA from the area north of the I-10 around the McDowell Road corridor there, and that's because a substantial number of those properties, the slum or blight conditions have been ameliorated, and so we removed that area. We also removed an area around the Hope 6 project down in South Central, because that particular one had a special redevelopment area just for that. But in reality, a lot of that was changed because of the new Hope 6 project that went in and was built there. And so we were able to take out a portion of that and address it, and the other parts of it will be put in this larger plan. And so we will go on here to, we do have a proposed some boundary revisions that as part of the public outreach that the city's been undertaking over the last several weeks. We've heard from 4 different property owners who wish to be expanded. They're directly adjacent to existing boundaries, and we've checked with the consultant in terms of them being able to meet criteria with slumber blight and include them, and so we are proposing that we would include those properties shown on the screen right here at 949 East Van Buren, North 7th Avenue, between 39 and 819, those properties, 1141 East Jefferson Street, and 1101 East Jefferson Street. What we would do if the subcommittee endorses including those additional properties, we would come to the full council at our formal meeting and have the revised map boundaries to include those, but it's permissible to include those at this time. Those are the ones that we heard as we were on our public outreach, who wish to be included. In terms of looking at this next slide here, this shows you the downtown code and planning overlays that are adopted by the council today. And so within these particular areas, they already have plans, much like I said, the aviation land reuse one. And so in some cases, we don't need to redo any of those. We already have a South Central TOD steering committee that is appointed, that is looking at South Central. So we'll take that group's work and put it in this larger redevelopment area plan and framework. But other areas we might have to spend some time to work with them on because we haven't had a whole lot of recent work with them in terms of what they would like to see. So it's taking their existing RDA plan or code that was in place, and then updating that with them, and that's what we would take place in the fall. And this is our proposed, framework for dealing with that, and it would be after significant public involvement to discuss what elements would go into the plan, and then ultimately come back to the council to address what's in the plan. And so there's the planning administration, technical assistance and counseling, public services, funding and economic development opportunities, how do we can prepare the land for redevelopment, rehabilitation of structures, and then also removing and installing public improvements and facilities. And so these are the big ticket items that we know we've heard from the community and that we wish to include. We will be gathering other input in the fall to see if there are other ones to include. But in particular, we do know that we will have obviously the overall arching goals, but we will include some area-specific goals. So we'll be able to take those goals from example, the East Lake Garfield, Reinvent Phoenix plan that is there is fairly recent. We can incorporate some of those that are applicable into this policy plan as it relates to the RDA opportunities associated with it. And so we will have, good public involvement, but there's a substantial amount of work that's already been done from a planning perspective, and it's really updating some of it in key areas and then reflecting what's appropriate already in their adopted plans, like the Sky Harbor reuse study, and bringing that in and reflecting it, not going through a whole nother planning process with groups that have been planned to death and just want to see change happen within their neighborhood and community. So overall, we want to support the quality housing. That's something that we have heard across the board. Maintaining sufficient open space and a safe environment. Provide efficient, safe, and functional circulation systems. Enhance economic opportunities for jobs and increased incomes, as well as ameliorate some of the negative environmental conditions. And then looking at how do we continue to enhance a sense of community and neighborhood, and that's different in different parts of this area, and that's why having these area goals will reflect what those adopted plans are already telling us, with some more community input from those folks on what they would like to see. So our next steps, we've been doing the community outreach here through the month of May. We did do notifications to all the property owners within the proposed boundary. 30 days prior to the council considering the new boundary. We're currently scheduled for the June 3rd formal council meeting to adopt the boundary. And then over the summer and fall, we'll be working on developing and updating the plans conducting additional public outreach, and then hope to be back to City Council for adoption at the end of 2020. And with that, I think Ms. Mackey has a couple of comments she wants to add as well.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. One piece of information that Mr. Stevenson wasn't privy to, because it happened in a meeting just recently, and we're doing a divide and conquer with the virtual meetings that are here today. It was requested by the surrounding area that we leave Hope 6 in the redevelopment area. They felt that there was a number of properties that surrounded Hope 6 that still could benefit from the downtown redevelopment area. The consultant went back and analyzed that request from the public meeting and was able to continue keeping that in the redevelopment area and still meet the 71% of properties that were either slum or blighted. So we did a divide and conquer at a most recent meeting, and I attended one, he attended another, and he wasn't privy to that information. So I just wanted to make sure that was on the record.
Thank you. Actually, I had a property owner in the redevelopment area that's in the expansion area. So you have been doing some community outreach. She contacted me. She's very supportive of it. She sees that it's a valuable tool as she redevelops her property. Are there any questions from subcommittee? Carlos? Yay, I finally...
Yeah. Thank you.
I have to look over here to see you guys.
Yeah. Again, I applaud the work from Chris and Alan. I think particularly for the East Lake and Nuestros Barrios, or the airport reuse area, this has been a long time coming. A lot of the area has been waiting on FAA directions, and I also want to thank Alan for acknowledging the work of aviation and the community who put together a development plan, and if folks are watching, or just want to kind of reassure folks that work is what's going to be used to make sure that the area comes together and we're able to work there. And I think this is a great way to spark the area and to get it going. And I think we're all having a hard time figuring out how to outreach and keep community involved in these processes. So I just want to continue to encourage that. We don't know when we're going to be able to meet in person and do those sorts of things, but let's just keep trying to find creative ways to do outreach and keep people knowing all the great work that's happening. I think if there's concerns, or that I've heard concerns, it's mostly because they're not understanding or know that this is actually coming to help and support the neighborhood. So again, thank you all so much for your work.
Any other questions or comments from subcommittee? Okay, can I get a motion then?
Yeah, so second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, unanimous, thank you. The next item is 18, and this is the consideration of a citizen petition regarding council meeting times. And we do have two speakers, but Denise is here. Give us an update.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. This item is a citizen petition related to Phoenix council meetings. And we received a citizen petition from Christina Eichelkraut on December 18th of 2019 at the formal meeting. And the request was to split the council meetings into daytime meetings for administrative or uncontested items, or evening meetings for constituent-focused or contested items. This was initially reviewed by the subcommittee January 15th. And at the time, staff did present about the topic, and the subcommittee requested that staff research meeting times and estimated costs for evening meetings, and the system used by the Arizona State Legislature for request to speak, and practices in other cities related to their meetings and their technology, and other avenues to broaden public participation and transparency in city meetings. And so we did begin by meeting with the petitioner and discuss the petition itself and the concept of splitting meetings And we started by talking about the different ways that we could split a meeting potentially as requested by the petitioner. And we talked about splitting by interest, whether something is contested, an item on the agenda is contested or uncontested, and the challenges related to that, particularly logistics. There's not really a way for staff to know whether something's contested or uncontested prior to releasing the agenda. Also, for consistency, the public wouldn't know ahead of time whether their item would land for a meeting in the morning or during the day or in the evening. And also for transparency as it relates to the method by which staff would have to try and determine whether something was contested or uncontested, and the public not being privy to that. We also talked about attempting to change these meetings so that they would be basically divided by impact, either by population or geographic area, as requested by the petitioner as well. And we also discussed the challenges to that in terms of logistics of trying to figure out what would be an adequate area to be able to take into account, or even issues of equity, where in some cases on an agenda item, maybe not that many people or a geographic area, a smaller geographic area might be interested. However, that could create some equity issues in terms of whether they should be during the day or in the evening. So the one way that is feasible in terms of splitting up a meeting would be by type or topic, which is what we currently do. And so in terms of trying to determine whether this would be feasible in the evening, that could be potentially feasible. We had discussed in January that this has been tried by the council in the past. In 2012, for example, the formal was moved to start at 5 p.m. And then in 2013, it was moved back to 3 p.m., mostly because there wasn't really a significant increase in attendance to start at 5 p.m. And then finally in 2015, the meetings were aligned for policy and formal to start at 2:30, and then zoning items to be on the formal after the formal agenda items. And so essentially, based on this past experience at the January meeting, staff talked a little bit about these meetings in the evening. We have looked at the cost into what would happen if we moved any of these meetings that we currently have or any new meetings by type or topic to the evening. And essentially the cost is the cost of staffing. So right now for our formal, for example, since it starts at 2:30, but it many times does go past 5, we currently do plan, and there's staffing, adequate staffing, for be able to stay in the meeting until late hours if needed. And so essentially if we were to do a meeting in the evening, it would be just the cost of staffing and essentially just continuing to have a meeting. So as an example, we did a cost out for a meeting that would start at 6, for example, and end at 6 p.m. and end at 9 p.m. And the cost would be approximately $4,000 to essentially have that meeting. And that would be the cost for staffing essentially. So, historically, there have been several options and a variety of meetings and options for people to be able to attend and to meet the wide variety of needs of the different stakeholders. So historically, there have been evening meetings and offsite community meetings, for example, budget hearings, planning and development meetings, village committee meetings. There have been special meetings, working group meetings, and ad hoc meetings at different times. And there's our consistent and regular meetings, which are our policy, and our subcommittee, and our formal meetings. In addition to that, and noting that basically it's very difficult to find one ideal time for every meeting, the city has tried to basically diversify the types of times and meetings that it has. So the city does make every attempt to provide a variety of meetings and notice to the public, so agendas and meeting information are published ahead of time, way in advance than the 24-hour required open meeting law deadline of 24 hours. And so meeting online agendas and meeting information is published online approximately a week prior. And it's live broadcast, the meetings are live broadcast by Phoenix Channel 11 and online.
Councilwoman?
Yes, Vice Mayor?
Yes. Denise, I have a question. What do you mean by special working meetings? I guess I just never heard that term.
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor, when we talk about special meetings, I meant to say special meetings, comma, working group meetings. So for example, we recently just had a working group meeting, I think it was yesterday, and special meetings, we call for items like, for example, we have one coming up on the formal tomorrow for our home rule as an example. So I meant to say special meeting, comma, working group meetings, and ad hoc committee meetings.
And then off-site community, can you break that down just a little bit more?
So historically, in the past, we've had budget hearings, for example, off-site meetings. Some of the council offices also have, and so those are off-site. Those are typically at a community center, for example, a senior center. They're in the morning and in the afternoon for the budget hearings. I think the Planning and Development Department has several meetings in the evening related to their planning commission and their villages. And then some council members, for example, when there's an annexation and it's of interest in a certain area, there'll be a public, a meeting basically scheduled in that area by the council office or staff.
And what does evening mean? Like, is it just like an evening meeting, or what is that?
Evening typically would include like 6 p.m. and on. So as an example, I participated in a series of meetings that had to do with licensed services several years ago, and all of the meetings would begin at 6 p.m., for example.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, and so the subcommittee also requested that staff take a look at other cities and what they were doing. And so at the time, in February, staff did consult with 28 other cities, and basically the meeting times varied significantly by jurisdiction. And so in terms of a commonality, what we found was that other larger cities, for example, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Philadelphia, San Diego, or Dallas, they have daytime meetings. They do have comparable agendas to our agendas in the sense that they have agendas that are 100 or more items typically. And so their meetings are usually during the day. They have a wide variety of different types of meetings, but most of them are in the day. And then we also did find that other valley cities, so all other valley cities in Arizona, they typically have evening meetings and they have a smaller agenda items as well. We also took a look at, based on the subcommittee's request, at the system at the Arizona State Legislature. And so we met with their team, with our information technology services team internally and with their team as well. And they do have a request to speak system. Their system is based on initial in-person registration. So in order to be able to use their request to speak system, a person has to go down to the Capitol the first time and do an in-person registration. And they do this registration in a kiosk. And then once they do that first registration, then they can use the system either at the kiosk if they're there in person or online where they can just sign in. And they can request to speak, but they do have to appear in person to speak. And their meetings are during the day. They also have an e-comments system, which is it's the same integrated system where they accept written comments on agenda items, and these comments are visible to others, and they're unfiltered comments. We discovered through their information technology services section that it's a custom in-house system, and it was developed over 15 years ago, and they have dedicated staff for that, and basically they've been developing it for 15 years and improving upon it as they go. And it is not currently available and not portable. Their code is not available for the city. So they have received requests from other jurisdictions to make it available, but they have not been able to do that yet. So since the last time we met, a lot of things have changed. We met last in January, and so COVID-19 has impacted the way we meet. And so as you know, the CDC issued federal guidelines, and federal guidelines were issued, and the CDC has made some recommendations related to stopping the spread of COVID-19. The City of Phoenix did declare a local emergency, and social distancing measures were established. So in-person gatherings were restricted, and the City Council began meeting virtually. And no public is still, at this time, allowed in the council chambers. And so staff from numerous departments essentially worked quickly to respond to the immediate need of public participation in a virtual environment. And it has been a very quick and interesting process, and I think we've done our best to try and implement as many avenues as possible for people to participate. So we now have new public participation options. The current options, and as I mentioned, we've been in development, so things have been changing and in flux, and we've been learning a lot throughout this process, and it has required a huge amount of staff and from a variety of different departments, so it's been a very big effort. And what we have currently is we have a register to speak by phone system where people can call a number to register to speak at least 1 hour prior to the meeting. We also have the ability for people to speak during the meeting by WebEx or by phone. We have the ability for persons to listen to a meeting only if they wish to just listen by WebEx or by phone. And we just recently launched the new Register to Speak and e-comment system, which was basically building upon our existing agenda management system and opening it up for people to be able to, opening up a new module, basically, to be able to register to speak and file their comments online electronically. And in order to communicate this information, we have been developing a lot of different strategies and trying a lot of different new things. In particular, this infographic was developed and it's currently on our council meetings webpage, and it includes information about the different steps to use the new request to speak and e-comment system, in addition to the phone number if persons have questions or they want to request to speak by phone or they need assistance in Spanish. We also have now put on top of all of the agendas all the different ways for persons to participate in a meeting, and so each agenda now has on the top page how to listen, how to dial in, and how to look at it online. We also have links on the meeting. We have new links on our meetings page. These links are directly to the request to speak and e-comment system. And also, we just recently this week, based on feedback that we received from one of the council offices, we've added a link directly to the WebEx from our council meetings page. We also had developed 2 videos, one in English and one in Spanish, with a step-by-step process on these steps to register to speak and submit e-comments. And we're also running a segment on Channel 11 with this information in English and in Spanish with these videos. And so we're really trying to get the word out there and gather information and input on how to continue to improve this. And so with that, I would take any questions.
Thank you. And last evening, we got an email from Christina, who was the petitioner, with some very thoughtful comments that we should make sure we get into the record as well. I believe she's on the phone. So, Christina, are you there?
Yes.
Hey, hi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great.
Go ahead.
So I did request to speak. I'm not going to reiterate everything that I sent because, like I said, I've emailed that and I've submitted a comment. So I do have one additional comment, however, and then I also had a question about something that was said, or maybe it's more a clarification. So I'm not sure how much time I have, but one of the things I wanted to ask about was in terms of moving contested items, and maybe that does need to be clarified. That's in specific regard to zoning items, and especially given the new technology that's in place where people can comment like online ahead of time, and also just as a member of the Village Planning Committee, I'm a little confused as to why you wouldn't know those were contested, because people go through an entire process to contest certain zoning issues prior to the council meeting, and now they can even comment online. So I guess I'm just requesting clarification as to why that would be like unknown. And I also want to just clarify that I specifically meant like, in terms of moving contested items, I'm specifically talking about zoning, because you end up with council meetings that are basically spent on they are lengthy meetings, but they'll be spent on like 1 or 2 agenda items. And frequently that is zoning. So given the fact that people show up to Village Planning Commission meetings beforehand, they show up to developer community meetings beforehand, I'm not quite sure why you wouldn't have a sense as to whether or not a zoning item is contested prior to the council meeting.
The planning director left, unfortunately. We can certainly look into that for you. Why don't we do that? I don't see Alan. Alan was out in the lobby, but I guess he's gone. If you would let us get together with Alan, and then we'll give you a call. Will that work?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like I said, maybe that's just a clarification on my point. That was in specific reference to zoning meetings. And then also, the only thing I wanted to add that may or may not be in the emailed comments, but I think it is an important point, is a lot of the information given in terms of participation is based on 2015, but I think given the extreme zeitgeist of civic and political participation on all levels, including municipal levels, since 2016, I really don't feel like that is a kind of accurate barometer to measure potential political participation. But on that note, I also think it's worth saying that the right to address your elected official is not like PTO or an Amazon video rental. It's not use it or lose it. You don't lose it just because you haven't used it. It should exist as a matter of course in perpetuity. for reasons I don't think are that, necessary to articulate. I mean, I have the right to free speech, and if I wanted to, I could write a blog about how I hate broccoli. But just because I choose not to do that, that doesn't mean I no longer have that right. So even if only one person ever actually attended a council meeting, like I'm the only person at this meeting right now, like that doesn't mean you shouldn't still have a practical ability to attend it. It's not PTO. It's not use it or lose it. So I do take a little bit of issue with that being used as a justification. And then in terms of some of the ability to comment virtually, things like that, I mean, I think all of that is great. And then the only other thing that I do think needs to be verbally reemphasized is I do commend the effort the city does make in terms of having neighborhood meetings to, inform residents about potential changes to things like utilities. There's a lot of good outreach done. There's a lot of effort put in. And those meetings are in the evening, and that's great. My issue is that those are informational meetings. At the end of the day, the meeting that counts is the meeting where the vote happens. And this petition is about practical accessibility to the meeting that counts. And you have an ability to submit comments at those meetings. You have an ability to submit comments online, again, prior to the council meeting. So this notion that, not knowing whether or not something is contentious or contested, I'm not quite sure I understand why that would be the case, especially given the complimentary informational meetings. So that's kind of the only things I want to say. Everything else, like I said, I've submitted in an email and I've written down. I'm not going to take the time to reiterate that here, but those are kind of the three things that I think I just have either questions about or am a little bit skeptical of.
Okay, thank you, Christina. We'll definitely do a follow-up call with you. I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. We do have one more speaker, Sean Zemerud. Sean, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Good
Hi.
morning, Madam Chair. Yep, and members of subcommittee. So at first, I just want to thank Christina for bringing this really important petition to the subcommittee, and I would like to thank staff for reviewing it and doing a little bit of research. I want to point out at this point, in staff's response to this petition, one of the sentences that I found a little bit interesting was that they said technology options became available to facilitate virtual communication under these extraordinary circumstances. So obviously we all know that technology options didn't just become available now, right? These technology options have been available. There's been a lack of will, whether it's staff or council, to really push for these things. And so when we take this to a larger level, Christina's petition to me is all about how do we find better ways to do things, to better engage with the community. And so I would really take a moment to ask you, because I think this is such an important issue, even if it's just for discussion, to bring this to the full council, because this affects our entire community. It affects the way that we interact with you, with our publicly elected leaders, our officials, and it's truly important. I just want to, again, point out that, the recent pattern under the leadership of our current mayor has been to restrict speech and the ways that we interact with the council. So I just feel like that's very concerning, and we want to go back the other way. So anything that we can make available to the public, whether it's technology options or finding smarter ways to have the agenda items set out like Christina recommends, I would just ask you to bring this, again, before the full council, if only just for discussion, so that everybody can be involved in this very important topic. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will be happy to bring it to the mayor's attention and potentially see if we can get it on a policy. But I'll have to talk to her. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments from subcommittee? Well, then, thank you, and I guess we'll do a follow-up with Christina, and then I will also talk to the mayor about a full city council discussion. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
Madam
for your
Chair.
work on it. So next item is number 19, and this is a consideration of another citizen petition that related to emergency and long-term needs relating to individual, oh, I'm sorry.
Comments on the previous item. Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's so hard. I'm trying, I have to look over, and I apologize.
No, I am so sorry. I don't know what happened. But I just had a couple of comments here. And I think I've said this before. But I just wanted to say that I believe, that public participation is crucial to the democratic process in our city, as it is in all of our governments. I believe that the city has taken some very important steps in the face of the public health crisis to improve access and public participation. I am very supportive of a request to speak system similar to what the Arizona legislators uses. I would like some clarification, though, as to who would decide what items would be heard in an evening meeting and what items would be heard during the day. Like, who makes those decisions?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Vice Mayor Guardado. So this was part of that conversation with the petitioner in terms of, how the agenda gets generated and how comments get generated. So typically what happens for at least the council meetings, so subcommittee meetings, policy, and formal, is the departments basically are working on different items and then they put them onto the agenda. So they start gathering their agenda items, they enter them into our agenda management system directly, and so each department presents an item to get onto the formal, for example. And so in terms of the challenge to know whether it's contested or not is that a lot of times these items are coming to the agenda due to a legal requirement or something else that needs to be approved through an ordinance or resolution or something like that for the formal, for example. So if we take like the example of an annexation, so staff might be meeting with the members with the applicant, might be meeting with the individual council office on an annexation, and then when it's time and if it's gone through all of its legal requirements, public hearings or anything else that might be required, then it's ready to go to the formal for action and approval of the ordinance. So at that time, the agenda is compiled approximately a week in advance and then published. And so at that time, that's when it gets open for comments, essentially, because people start seeing the agenda at that time. It's made public and available, and now people realize that something is on the agenda that's interesting to them. And so at that point, they will, for example, with the current system, now they can actually make the comments online. So in terms of determining, and that's exactly the challenge, is how to determine whether something is contested or not contested. We've had cases where We've seen cases where maybe, leading up, there have been some public meetings and there's a lot of opposition, let's say to a liquor license, and then the applicant works it out with the actual persons that were contesting it, and then it gets resolved by the time it gets to formal. So it's that organic process of basically putting the agenda items out there usually first, and then people reacting to those items and providing their input. And a lot of times that reaction happens between the time that the agenda is published, which is a week in advance, and really close to the meeting. The truth is that in my years of experience, for example, with liquor licensing, we would usually get comments or people would realize that the item is coming onto the agenda like a couple days in advance is really when they would pay extra attention to it and want to start submitting either their protest or something else related to it. So it's very dynamic, and in terms of that decision, that's exactly the challenge, is how to determine whether something is contentious or not contentious.
And then who makes that decision, though? Like, who decides what that, especially like if it's something in District 5, for example, would I be part of that decision making of what gets heard in earlier in the day, or if it gets heard later in the day? Given something in my district, I think I would have more of a pulse if that's something contentious or something that people want to be heard later or earlier in the day. So how much control do we have over that?
So staff does not recommend changing or splitting up meetings based on that because of the challenges. So if, for example, I do believe that the council offices do have a pulse on what's happening definitely in their area and on those items, but it could be that you have someone that hasn't had an opportunity to express that, and at the last minute, let's say 2 hours before the meeting, they want to contest it, and it could be an entire group of people or just one person. Therefore, staff does not recommend that type of split or decision-making because of those challenges, is who would be involved, and what if you got it wrong, and then the public wouldn't really know until the end or when that decision is made on which agenda it's going to be. Currently, that if you apply for a liquor license, it's going to end up on a formal agenda at 2:30 p.m., however many days the process typically takes, which is, let's say 60 to 90 days. And that's why staff is not recommending splitting the meetings by that.
Got it. Okay. I know that when this petition was given to us and when we started having this conversation, COVID hadn't hit us yet. And I know that right now there's just a lot of things that we're trying to figure out when it comes to technology, when it comes to getting everyone to submit their comments and being able to be part of the process of making these decisions. I know that's what we're trying to figure out right now, and I understand that everyone is trying to put their best foot forward on how do we make all of that happen. So I would like for us to continue to entertain a conversation on how is it, that we meet everyone in the middle, in the way where our staff be job, and then our community at the same time feels that they're being heard and that they're able to participate in this process. I think everyone's doing a great job, but at the same time, we just have to figure out how do we get everyone to be part of the process and that no one feels that they're being excluded. Thanks so much.
Definitely, thank you.
Thank you. And I do think Sean's suggestion was a good one, that we have a council-wide discussion. Okay, so...
Sorry, I had a comment as well.
Councilman?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm appreciative. I think even this process, this is one of the citizen petitions that I've seen us being able to work with folks. So I want to thank Christina for putting this together and staff for continuing to work on it. I like some of the creativity of the possibility of council meetings going in different districts. I think we're going off of the vice mayor's suggestion. I think we're learning and shifting with COVID. And so I think, how do we, now that we have more things that are doable, because of COVID, we've been forced and we've been able to actually receive funds and use some of the federal funds to address this. I just feel like maybe we're pointing or going towards some sort of resident committee where folks like Christina and Sean can come together with our staff or other folks that know or can see the technology that's being put out there, to come up with a better solutions to move forward. The city needs me. I agree with the sentiment. I think I would prefer just going straight into evening meetings so we can remain consistent, or maybe just moving the meetings a little bit later to a 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. and starting off with items that might not kind of that same division, and then having the later time for other items. So I would prefer consistency. I don't know about the changing times every other week. Just wouldn't want people to miss meetings because of that. But I appreciate figuring out this participation, and I don't know if we're moving forward with this or if we're bringing it back here, or if we have the ability to create something, or if it's the mayor that has the ability to create something to figure this out. But I'm really interested in figuring out how we can get more participation in our meetings and be more accessible.
Again, I think the best thing would be to talk to the mayor and see if we can have a council-wide discussion on it, put it on one of our policies. So I will be happy to have that conversation with her after this meeting. Thank you. Okay. I know Marshall keeps jumping up and down. She's getting her exercise in. So, item 19. Welcome.
So good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, here to provide an overview to you of the consideration of petition related to emergency and long-term needs for individuals experiencing homelessness. The petition was received by the City of Phoenix on February 19, 2020, and the petition requests that the City Council take action to address the following: immediate and long-term sanitation and health risks, provide housing or a safe place for the large number of homeless living in encampments that make it unsafe to walk the streets in the area. And then third, mitigate illegal activity in the area that make it unsafe to live, walk the streets, work, or visit the area. The areas identified by the petition are bounded by Washington Street to the north, Grant Street to the south, 7th Avenue to the east, and 17th Avenue to the west. Currently, these are the services that we are providing relative to that general area. On February 3rd, 2020, the Public Works Department has increased its services by providing 4 8-yard containers adjacent to the Human Services campus for waste disposal. These containers are serviced 5 days per week, Monday through Friday. Our Street Transportation Department cleans the area twice per week. This includes gathering, picking up and disposal of large amounts of debris and trash, including clothes, food, boxes, pallets, furniture, wood, and metal scraps. Additionally, the city recently added no trespassing signs to the easements in the general area around the Human Services campus to assist with enforcing trespassing issues. Thirdly, our police department continues to provide services. This has actually been updated. Instead of 2 dedicated officers from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m., 7 days per week, that has changed. Our police department is now providing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if you will, service in that particular area. Around the campus, again, our officers are supported and dedicated to leading with services while also responding to any criminal activity in the area as well as calls for service. On March 4th, 2020, as you all may recall, the City Council directed staff to develop an enhanced strategy to further efforts to address homelessness in our city by June 1st, 2020, with a note that this enhanced strategy is separate from the proposed Human Service Campus zoning application, which is still under consideration. Missing... My apologies. I have one more slide. Okay. I don't know what happened when I clicked. It should have been. Okay. I apologize, not sure. There was one more slide, so this is what it should be. So there was that, and then this was. Why don't I just go ahead, if you don't mind, Chairwoman Stark, let me just read the final slide. And really what the final slide actually is to update on the City Council approved strategy as a result of COVID-19 that you just recently approved on April 21st, 2020, right, which of course was after the direction that was given to come back with the long-term strategy on June 1st. And as you may recall, that plan that you all voted on approved a homelessness and social service strategy to mitigate the impact that COVID-19 is having on individuals experiencing homelessness. The plan allocated funding and housing vouchers for vulnerable and at-risk seniors, our families, single women, single men, youth, and that plan is designed to serve 200 families and 555 individuals. So with that, Chairwoman Stark and members of the subcommittee, that concludes the update based upon the request of that citizen's petition, and welcome any questions.
Thank you. I appreciate it. The petitioner is not on the line. I have chatted with her a lot over the course of several months, and I know she's been very appreciative of what the city's been doing. Are there any comments or questions from Council Subcommittee? I'm going to look this way so I can see if someone is raising their hand. Okay, well, again, thank you so much. Oh, okay. You got to turn that camera on so I can see you waving. Okay. Vice Mayor, did you have a comment? Okay. Thank you. How are you doing? Okay, we're going to turn to item 20. Keeney, I think you have some good news on this petition. It relates to street infrastructure improvements near 7th Street and Alta Vista Road. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. You're right. We do have some good news to share with you today about this petition. So this item is for discussion and action. At the April 15, 2020 formal council meeting, Mr. Lowell Grady submitted a petition that included over 60 signatures from residents of the Heritage at Alta Vista community for various street infrastructure improvements near the intersection of 7th Street and Alta Vista Road. It is in District 7. The petition was forwarded to our department for review. We checked our files and found that we had no previous requests related to the items that were in the petition. So specifically related to the petition request, we had a number of items on there. The first was a new street light on the west side of 7th Street and Alta Vista to better illuminate the intersection. The second item was tree trimming on the east side of 7th Street south of Alta Vista to increase visibility for pedestrian crossing sign. There was an installation of a dedicated right turn lane that was requested at eastbound Alta Vista onto southbound 7th Street. We also had a request for installation of sidewalks along the south side of Alta Vista Road between 4th and 7th Street. And then finally, a request for a traffic study to look at volumes and speed along that area. The street transportation staff did reach out to Mr. O'Grady to provide information about the various programs and services available to address the items on his petition. So updates from staff related to that. We did make contact with Mr. O'Grady, and the items to report here is we have done a lighting review, or will be conducting a lighting review at the intersection of 7th Street and Alta Vista to determine whether or not it meets our city light standards. We did have a work order that was put in place to be able to install a cantilevered sign to better improve the visibility of the pedestrian crossing sign. Staff has also conducted a field review to determine and has determined that pavement width along Alta Vista Road west of 7th Street can accommodate the dedicated right turn lane. A work order has been created to complete that work. And then since traffic volumes are abnormally low right now, we're going to do a traffic study later once traffic returns more to normal. And then staff also shared information with Mr. O'Grady about the sidewalk modernization program and the petition requirements related to that. I wanted to take a quick opportunity, kind of as a public service announcement, so if anybody who might be on the call or seeing this meeting now or sometime later, that if anybody has any residents out there who might have concerns or questions about something going on the streets or issues that are concerned, we want to make sure we provided information up here to contact our dispatch. That's the kind of the first step you could take, is there's a phone number there. You can also request a certain number of services through street transportation through the Phoenix at Your Service link as well. So I want to make sure people know that, so they don't necessarily have to come and submit a petition for that. They can reach out to us in other ways, and we are generally pretty responsive on trying to get to them and help them out. The last item here was just the recommendation. We did want to note that the resident, even though he's not on the phone right now, he did reach out to us through the process and through our virtual meeting process, and did had great things to say about his interaction with the city staff on this, and was comfortable with the recommendation going forward, which our recommendation is for the subcommittee to recommend that staff continue working with Mr. O'Grady and members of the community regarding the petition request. With that, I'll have you happy to answer any questions that the subcommittee might have.
Thank you. And the petitioner is not on the line, so I suspect he's happy that you're working with him. Thank you. Are there any comments from subcommittee? So you would like to have a motion to recommend that staff continue working with Mr.
I
O'Grady?
move to, yes,
Okay, can I get a
Yes.
second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I think the ayes have it. Thank you. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Madam Chair.
And you are very accessible. I can definitely tell people if they need to connect with streets, they're always available to help. Thank you. And last, we have a citizen petition dealing with financial disclosures and council communications on devices. And Denise is back. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Yes, I'm back, and as you said, this petition is a citizen petition for financial disclosures and council communication on devices. And so we received a citizen petition from Abby Miller, and it was a request for city council members and/or their spouses or household members to publicly have posted any and all funds received from unions, nonprofits, and any other potential conflicts. In addition to that, it was 3 items on the citizen petition that were requested. The second item was that city council members publicly disclose the specific amount of money and/or benefits they, their spouses, or family members have received from unions, nonprofits, or other potential conflicts since 2015. And also to ensure that all council members' official conversations and communications are handled on official and not personal devices. And so state law currently does already require the disclosure of most of these items. Basically, through the annual financial disclosure statement, elected officials must disclose currently sources of compensation benefits, real property interests, debts, and gifts, among other items, on a yearly basis to the city clerk by the end of January each year. This information is then posted online, and it's retained for 3 years after the last term of office served per the city's retention schedule. In addition to that, campaign finance reporting requirements also outlined in state law require candidate committees to disclose contributions made to the candidate's campaign committee on a regular basis, on a quarterly basis during the 12 months preceding the second election for office for which the candidate is seeking election. And this information is submitted online to the city clerk and also posted online and retained for 3 years after the last term of office served by the city's retention schedule. There are prohibitions currently in place as well that are related to the petitioner's request. State law prohibits candidates from accepting contributions from labor organizations, and the Internal Revenue Code prohibits 501c3 organizations from directly or indirectly participating in any candidate political campaign. Therefore, related to the communications, all official communications and conversations, communications in particular from council members on their city-owned or personal devices are already subject to public record, and they constitute a public record, and it may be subject to disclosure. Therefore, staff recommends denying each of the 3 requested items identified in the citizen petition because the items requested are either already required by law, they're either subject to disclosure, or they're prohibited. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you. I appreciate your presentation. I think we're all pretty aware of what we need to do, but I do appreciate it. And the petitioner is not on the line. So are there any comments from subcommittee members? Well,
I have a question. Ms. Stelter.
Councilwoman?
Didn't the city council also agree that there are some rules, I think it's under the ethics, that you can't accept anything with more than $50? And if so, we have to report it to your office?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Williams, yes, that is absolutely correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Garcia, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I would like to motion to deny staff's recommendation.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the ayes have it. So we have another call to public, but we have no call to public. Have you had a chance to look at future agenda items? Have you any comments or thoughts on it? Well, then, I guess we are adjourned. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.